Most people aren't aware of how our brains are constantly working against us. What's alarming is how frequently this happens, and even without us realizing. These mental blockers stop us from pursuing our goals, like getting fit or reading more books or working on a passion project. If you want to know what these mental blockers are and how to beat them so that you'll stop ruining your progress towards your goals, then keep watching. But before we get into it, if you're new here, my name is Tika and I post videos every Sunday on evidence-based self-improvement, productivity, health, and well-being. So if that sounds like your jam, then do subscribe. There's a term for these mental blockers in behavioral science, and that is referred to as cognitive biases. So what are cognitive biases? Our brain is constantly flooded with information and stimuli, so it does certain things to help us process that information more easily. Basically, the human brain has the tendency to simplify the information coming in, and this leads to systematic errors in thinking. They're kind of like shortcuts that our brains make, which often affect our ability to make decisions and judgments. Here are 6 key cognitive biases that you need to be aware of and how to overcome them. Number 1, confirmation bias. Confirmation bias causes us to favor information that favors our pre-existing beliefs. Let's say you're trying to start a side hustle of selling clothes online whilst working your very busy day job. If you believe that you don't have the time for it, then your brain is going to latch onto that narrative and subconsciously look for evidence to support that narrative. You'll find yourself focusing more on how overwhelmed you feel about your current workload, how your boss just drains your energy so that when you get home you really don't have the energy to do anything, and so on. Confirmation bias also causes you to ignore the evidence that proves that you do have the time. Like, for example, the 2 hours that you spend in the YouTube rabbit hole every night. Could those 2 hours be used more productively instead towards your goals? Absolutely. So how can we overcome this? The first step is to identify that narrative. What story are you telling yourself? Is it that you don't have time to go to the gym and work out? Or is it that you're too shy and introverted to ask that person out on a date? Or that you're simply not good enough at X yet in order to do Y? Here is where you really need to be honest with yourself and observe how you are justifying behaviors which aren't serving you. Next, you need to be actively changing that behavior. Commit to an action plan that will prove this narrative wrong. Let's apply this strategy to an example. Have you ever thought to yourself, oh, dating sucks, so why bother trying? All men are trash. Women don't like nice guys anymore. Your brain is gonna wanna justify that belief by subconsciously looking for things that support that. So these are things like all the bad dating experiences that your friends have told you about, all the bad experiences that you've had, and all these posts on Instagram and TikTok that tell you the 5 types of men that you need to avoid, don't believe him when he says this, why men ghost, and you get the picture. This is your brain justifying to yourself that dating sucks and love is dead and I should just give up. Notice that these justifications are actually just excuses to stop yourself from putting yourself out there, because putting yourself out there takes effort and your brain wants you to avoid going through that struggle. It takes effort to sustain a conversation on a dating app. It takes effort to go out and meet new people. It takes effort to build a relationship with someone. And it's hard to face rejection when things don't work out. Realize that your brain is just trying to protect you from this pain and effort by giving you these excuses to latch onto. So the action plan to beat this is to notice this bias that you have, ignore all this negative rhetoric from friends and social media, and just put in the work. Go out on dates, meet new people, be proactive about it, and good things will come your way. But it won't happen unless you actually go out and try. Cognitive bias number 2, the affect heuristic. When your emotions heavily influence your decisions and your actions, this is called the affect heuristic. People tend to overlook how emotions play a huge role in determining what we do. This is especially relevant when you're about to quit something, or if you're about to start something that is going to have a big impact on your goals. Let's say that you want to start a YouTube channel, but the more you read into it, the more you feel like backing out, because you're hearing from all these other YouTubers that it takes a lot of effort and time to learn how to make good videos. Editing is really hard, and you need to learn about all these things like lighting, cameras, and audio, and it all feels super overwhelming. When this happens, you should consciously probe the emotion behind your decision. Are you not showing up because you're afraid of failure? Or is the learning curve so steep that you're trying to avoid the feelings of frustration? If your goals and dreams are ambitious, which I'm pretty sure they are, then they're gonna make you feel out of your depth at some point. If it were easy, everyone would be achieving their goals. The trick here is to recognize that your feelings are temporary. Accept that discomfort is just part of the journey, and that any feelings of frustration are transitory. This is what's gonna help you to persevere. No one feels good about themselves when they're doing something that's not particularly enjoyable or something that they're not particularly good at. So what what can you do about this? Remind yourself that the emotions that you're feeling will pass as soon as you reach a certain level of mastery. Make the promise to show up 10 times and really engage in that activity. After you've done this, reassess your emotions and see whether you still feel those unpleasant feelings, or if they've disappeared or reduced significantly over time. And chances are they probably have. When I first started my YouTube channel, I absolutely dreaded the idea of editing videos. I had never done it before and I really didn't know where to start. That learning curve was really steep and daunting for me. My first video took like 2 days to edit because I had to learn so many things along the way. And not gonna lie, it was not an enjoyable process. But then despite the discomfort, I kept showing up because I reminded myself that, hey, I'm not gonna be a newbie forever. I knew that in order to get past that newbie stage, I needed to go through that discomfort. And after editing a few more videos, I realized, actually, this isn't quite so bad and I feel like I'm getting better and better at this. It takes me maybe like a few hours now as opposed to a few days to edit a video. And now that I've actually reached a certain stage of mastery, I've started to enjoy the editing process. Another thing that I found really helpful in managing my emotions is to measure the gain and not the gap. Often we compare ourselves to people who are already experts at the thing that we're trying to do. And that can be pretty discouraging. You'll find yourself feeling really frustrated that you're not at that level already. I find myself comparing my video quality to famous YouTubers like Ali Abdaal and Matt Davella, who have had 5+ years of experience in YouTube and who have millions of subscribers. And that's just not helpful at all, especially for someone who's just starting out in her journey. What you should be doing instead is measuring the gain, i.e. where you are now compared to where you were before. So in my case, it would be comparing myself to how I am with video editing now versus how I was when I first initially started. And that is a much more realistic and healthy way to measure progress. And it really helps to ease the feelings of frustration that come with comparison. So measure the gain and not the gap. Cognitive bias number 3, the planning fallacy. The planning fallacy is the tendency for people to underestimate how long it takes to do an activity. Psychology says that we are just way too optimistic about our productivity. So I work full-time as a project manager in the finance tech sphere, and our number one responsibility is to come up with a timeline for the project and to ensure that the project keeps in line with this timeline. The golden rule in project management, which I have applied to every area of my life, is to put in sufficient buffers in your timeline. So even if things take longer than you expected them to, at least you are still on track on your timeline. This is how you offset for any potential delays. If you fail to plan, then you are planning to fail. This is especially true if you have a new project that you're trying to work on, or you have an online course or certification that you want to get done by a certain time, or if you're trying to pick up a new skill for work or university like coding. Expect that things will take longer than you anticipate them to, and then plan accordingly. Set your expectations right. This is to avoid you from starting too late and missing the deadline that you set for yourself. Cognitive bias number 4, the Tiara Syndrome. This is the expectation that if you work hard every day, a time will come when you are rewarded and someone will effectively put a tiara on your head. In a corporate setting, this is doing good work, albeit silently, and expect your boss to notice that. How many of us have been in that position? But what you have to remember is that the people you are relying on to give you that reward are probably too busy focusing on themselves to even notice you in the first place. And also, they're probably trying to impress their boss, so they're not focused on you at all. In general, everyone's just too focused on themselves to be focusing on others. So it's your responsibility to draw attention to the work that you're doing. I think for a lot of people, especially if they're starting out and their full-time jobs, tend to feel really uncomfortable with this idea because it feels boastful or arrogant. But it's not. You've done the good work and you should recognize that. Forget that imposter syndrome. You need to truly believe that you and your work are worth that recognition. Cognitive bias number 5, the spotlight effect. Humans have the tendency to think that everyone's watching us 24/7. So if we do something embarrassing, then it literally feels like the whole world just witnessed it and that they're silently judging us for it. You shouldn't let the spotlight effect stop you from pursuing your goal out of fear of embarrassment, just because you think there's some imaginary spotlight over you and that people are watching you and that they're judging you, because the reality is they're just not. In the nicest way possible, no one cares about you because they're too busy worrying about themselves. And how freeing is that? To know that you're free to to experiment and try new things and really put yourself out there, knowing that no one else is really watching you. Number 6, self-serving bias. Self-serving bias is the tendency to take credit for positive outcomes and lay the blame for failures on someone or something else. So I'm a full-time project manager, and if anything goes wrong in the project, then I'm held accountable for it. So let's say there was a delay in a particular task because maybe one person on the team forgot that we needed to complete that thing. Even though that slip-up was technically caused by someone else on the team because they're the subject matter expert on that particular thing, I'm still accountable for it because I am the project manager and it is my responsibility that the project goes according to the timeline that we set out. So the wrong thing here for me to do would be to point fingers at that person and tell them, hey, it's your fault that we are behind schedule now. The right thing to do would be to say, okay, now that this has happened, it's fine. Let's all take responsibility for it in the team and ensure that next time we double and triple check that we have accounted for everything when we plan out the timeline for the project. The key thing here to remember is that any point of failure is a golden opportunity for reflection and for self-improvement. So take responsibility and take that as an opportunity to grow and become better. So those are the 6 key main cognitive biases that you need to be aware of and how to overcome them. If you found these insights valuable in any way, then please don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It really goes a long way in supporting this channel. I post videos every Sunday on productivity, health, well-being, and self-improvement. So if that sounds like your jam, then please do check out the other videos on my channel. Take care and see you in the next video.